You can stay for the entire meeting, whatever your pleasure. Our first item of business tonight is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Members, do you have a pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I read over the minutes and stuff, but I just got elected for this board, so.
Okay. Motion's been made to approve. Is there a second? Any deletions, corrections, or omissions?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in approval signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Ms. A.
Yeah. Ms. Coleman, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Ms. Coleman? How do I handle that? I don't know. Okay.
She's on mute. Do we have her muted? When you strolled over Kay Coleman, it said mute there. Well, maybe that would mute her.
That would mute her.
We have a full house, by the way. The Newberry County Board of Zoning Appeals is made up of 7 members, 1 from each council district. 7 appellate judges, if you will.
More credit than you deserve.
We're gonna continue, she's gonna call, if she can join in, we've got a quorum without her.
Yes.
I don't
Right.
wanna hold the
No,
meeting up.
all right.
Okay. Old business none scheduled. Our first case under new business is case number VA 01-02-01-22, a variance request for a 7.6-foot front yard setback for a 12-foot by 24-foot storage building for personal storage. The property is located at 238 Satterwhite Street, Whitmire, South Carolina, tax map number 311-1-2-5. Ms. Wertz.
The residents at 238 Satterwhite Street is asking for a 17.4 foot variance for the place.
I don't know what to do, but I did send a message in the chat. Pardon me? You, oh,
Can you hear me, Ms.?
no, I don't hear you all, but if you can hear me, that's great.
Okay, we hear you.
I don't know what to do.
Again, they're asking for the 17.4 foot variance from the 25-foot front yard setback for the placement of a 12 by 24 storage shed to be the 7.6 foot from the road right-of-way. Due to the topography of the land, the shed cannot go in the required location. The property has a deep ravine in the back, and this is the only location for the shed. The storage shed has actually been on the property now for a few weeks. We have received no complaints of the placement of the structure.
Thank you. She can't hear us now? Staff recommends? Okay. Is there anyone here speaking in favor of this proposal? Hearing none, is there anyone here speaking in opposition to this proposal? Hearing none. The board is required to consider the following factors per section 153.052A through F of the zoning ordinance. There are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to a particular piece of property. These conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity or in that district. Because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict use of the property. The authorization of the variance will not be a substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance, and the effect of the variance will not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district, will not extend physically a non-conforming use of the land, will not change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. Also, 153.172 subsection lot area width setback requirements as prescribed in the zoning table. Members, what's your pleasure? The chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, with this building have been sitting there and there's no opposition, I move that we grant this variance request.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Mr. Hipp and seconded by Mr. Lister. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ms. Coleman, can you hear us? Apparently not, but the motion's approved. Or the proposal is approved.
30 days.
Some of them require that and some of them don't, right? Whether it's a special exception or conditional. Does this fall under the 30-day waiting list?
I mean, it's,
All of them
Okay.
do? Okay.
but it's there, but. Keep them at your-
Next case, VA 02-02-01-22, a variance request for the relief of the average of the 40-foot setback from the 360 contour of Lake Murray for the placement of a new 12 by 24 storage building. The property is located at 37 Homewoods Lane, Prosperity, South Carolina, tax map number 594-1-13. Ms. Wertz.
The residents at 37 Homewoods Lane is asking for a 40-foot setback from the 360 contour of Lake Murray to be 30 foot from the 360 for the placement of a 12 by 24 storage building. Many years ago, there was a previous storage building on this property. It has been demolished. Because it was not rebuilt within 6 months, it cannot be put back in that location without a variance request. And the previous storage building was actually closer to Lake Murray than this one will be. So staff does recommend the variance.
Thank you. Anyone here speaking in favor of this variance? Sir, yes, and as you stand, identify yourself for the record, please. We are, yeah. These proceedings are being recorded.
Harold Partridge.
Okay, Mr. Pocket.
Okay. 40 feet setback is just fine with me. Originally, I thought I would like a little less toward the water, but after setting markers and so forth on the property, 40 feet, I'm good with that, if I can stay with that.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Pocket?
So, do we not, he's saying he could go with the 40 foot?
Yes, sir.
Yes, but that still requires a variance.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Any more questions for Mr. Pocket? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone here speaking opposed to this? Hearing none. This has to be read into the record on all proposed actions. The board is required to consider the following factors for section 153.052 A through F and 153.168 of the zoning ordinance. There are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to a particular piece of property. These conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity or in that district. Because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict use of the property. The authorization of the variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance, and the effect of the variance would not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district, would not extend physically a non-conforming use of the land, would not change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map, and 153.168 setback from the lake shore, as in zoning ordinance page 111. Judges, you've heard the applicant's proposal. What's your pleasure? The chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kay Coleman, and I move for the acceptance of the variance for the storage building.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Motion's been made by Ms. Coleman. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second's been made by Mr. Wilkes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. It's unanimous. You can hear us now, Ms. Coleman?
Yes,
Okay.
finally, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the next variance, VA 01030122, has been removed from the agenda.
Been removed, okay. That brings us to the next one. Case number VA 02-03-01-22, a variance request for the relief of the average of the 45-foot setback from the 360 contour of Lake Murray for the placement of a new site-built home. The property is located at 3 Bethel Church Road, Prosperity, South Carolina, tax map 593-7-1. Ms. Wertz.
Owners of 3 Bethel Church Road are asking for a variance request for the relief of the average of the 76-foot setback from the 360 contour to be 30 feet from the 360 for the placement of their new site-built home. Due to topography and the placement that DHEC is requiring them to place their septic tank, the proposed location is where the house needs to go for those 2 reasons. Staff does recommend this variance, and Mr. Chairman, you have a letter from a contiguous landowner.
Yes, I do. And I'll read this letter into the record. Good afternoon, Ms. Wertz. I am the owner of the lot located at 1 Bethel Church Road in Prosperity. This is the lot next to Jeremy and Michael Duval, who have indicated that they are requesting a variance for building their new home. We are in favor of granting this variance as it will not obstruct our view and will not adversely affect our property value. Should you have any questions or need any additional details, please feel free to reach out. Sincerely, Jana McLeish. Okay, anyone here speaking in favor of this proposal? Hearing none, anyone here speaking against this proposal? Hearing none, we're back to, the board is required to consider the following factors per section 153.052A through F and 153.168 of the zoning ordinance. They are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to a particular piece of property. These conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity or in that district. Because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict use of the property. The authorization of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or the public good, and the character of that district will not be harmed by granting of the variance, and the effect of the variance will not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district, will not extend physically a non-conforming use of the land, will not change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map, and also subsection 153.168 setback from the lake shore zoning ordinance page 1 11. Judges, you've heard the proposal. The chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Ransdell. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, go ahead.
Multiple seconds. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed
Aye.
likewise. Request is granted. Next item on the agenda is case number VA 03-03-01-22, a variance request for the relief of the minimum 1 acre lot size from the R2 rural zoning district. The property is located at 4704 South Carolina Highway 391, Prosperity, South Carolina, tax map number 470-20. Ms. Wertz.
The owners of 4704 SC Highway 391, which is the Sly Superette, are asking for the relief of the minimum 1 acre lot size that we have in the R2 rural zoning district. If you look at Exhibit C, you can see where the gas storage tanks is divided by the lot line. If this property was ever sold in the future, it would cause issues of the placement of the storage tanks being part of Sly's and then part of the residential lot that's beside it. So they're asking for a approval of a new plat that includes the entire storage tank on the Sly Superette parcel. It is not a full 1 acre, so we're here tonight asking for your approval for them to have less than 1 acre plat. Staff does recommend the variance.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Wertz?
I do have one question. So the plat will include the whole fuel tank?
If it gets approved tonight, it will include the entire tank. And if you see Exhibit A,
Yes, ma'am?
that is the new plat that they're wanting to be approved. And you can see the new lot line comes over and actually gives 7.6 feet setback from the
I got it.
side of the tank to the new lot line.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Any more questions of Ms. Wertz? Anyone here to speak in favor of this proposal? Anyone here to speak against it? Hearing none, the board is required to consider the following factors for section 153.052 A through F of the zoning ordinance. There are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to a particular piece of property. These conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity or in that district. Because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to a particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict use of the property. The authorization of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance, and the effect of the variance will not allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in the zoning district, will not extend physically a non-conforming use of the land, will not change the zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. Also, 153.172 lot area width setback requirements as prescribed in the zoning ordinance. Judges, you've heard the proposal. The chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant this variance.
Motion's been made by Judge Hipp. Is there a second?
Second.
By
Second.
Mr. Lister. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Request is granted. Next item of business is case number SE 01-03-01-22, a special exception request for a campground and recreational vehicle park. The property is located off Wheeling Road in Little Mountain, tax map number 645-8 and 645-9. Ms. Wertz.
The applicants are asking for the special exception request for a campground and recreational vehicle park located off of Wheeling Road. The site plan submitted meets all the special exception requirements and also all zoning requirements.
Okay. Any questions of Ms. Wertz? Thank you.
And you do have 2 letters to
I do
read.
have 2 letters. Leah, let me go ahead and read these into the record. This is to the Newberry County Board and Zoning Appeals Committee. I think an RV park and campground would not be good at this location, as we have timber in a semicircle beside and around it. There would be campfires that, if not properly attended and totally put out, may stray on properties next and around it. No, not a good thing. No, not a good thing. We have had 3 fires on my property, and 2 weeks ago, a fire burned about 60 acres of my property that I planted in pines. Some will survive, others won't. It came from a campfire next to the lake that caught woods on fire, it seems. Also, my property is used for deer hunting. I say no to allowing a RV park and campground. Sincerely, Crystal Godfrey. And I guess it's also from Barbara Riddle. Next letter. Ms. Wertz, I am John Fullman, one of the owners of the property adjoining this subject case number SE 01-03-01-22. Would you please read my comments into record at tonight's Board of Zoning Appeals meeting? Since our property isn't for sale or hasn't been, it's difficult to establish a value or determine whether our property value would be impacted by this sale or the use of the property in question. But it's safe to assume that it will be negatively impacted. While I'm not going to assume this action would be intentional, I am concerned that there will be trespassing on our property by RVers visiting the subject property. As a result, we are concerned with the potential liability of these trespassers being injured on our property. Is this now going to mean that the abutting property is going to have to be fenced in order for this not to occur? Is the petitioner going to incur this expense? How will my property be protected from potential fire? I am assuming if you have campers, you will have campfires. Will there be insurance in place that would cover my loss of the value of my timber on my property? Thank you for reading and hearing my comments. John, and it's John Fullman. And that's all the letters I have. Is there anyone here speaking in favor of this proposal? Sir.
Thank you. My name is Morgan Titus. I'm here with my brothers proposing this campground. Some details about the campground that I think are important that will help to resolve some of the concerns proposed over the letters. We really feel like this campground is the best use of that property, as that property has been on the market for some time and has not had any successful transactions yet on the property. My brother-in-laws and I are looking to leave our careers and work on the campground and be there full-time ourselves. We actually intend to have around 450 campsites. This includes RV sites with power and water. This includes tent sites with power, also primitive tent sites, some glamping sites, and even some RV sites with full hookups. We intend to service the rest of the campsites with dump stations besides the ones that have the full hookups. We intend to have bathhouses and laundry houses and general stores or a general store and a check-in center, maintenance shop, and a residential home on site. We tend to have the whole park under Wi-Fi, and all of these things are there to try to demonstrate the difference between a campsite that might have people that would trespass to try to designate the difference in what we're looking for. We're looking for a true campground experience, looking for campers that are looking to spend the weekend there with their family. We are actually intending on targeting the national average for the type of campers that attend these types of campgrounds in the southeastern region. That is mostly retiring folks, or they list them as senior age people, which is 55 years and older, as well as families with children. So those are our key groups that we're targeting. So there's several reasons we're targeting those key groups. The main reason is because we're truly seeking a family-friendly, family-oriented campground. So because of that, we're targeting families to be there and to attend the campground. Part of this is also an effort to create a safe campground. Because of that residential home there, we intend to have staff on hand 24/7. We expect to have lit roadways and safety stations, and those Wi-Fi options will help to keep the campground safe, as well as typical campground rules like nightly curfews and patrol walks by staff. We are trying to target campers that are there for weekend trips and for short stays. That's why we're limiting the number of full hookup sites that we have on site. We don't want to have a campground that is in any way resembling a trailer park or a mobile home park. We want it to truly be a camping experience. So because of that, we're also including walking trails and dog parks, playgrounds, pavilions, large group fire pits. All of the sites will have steel fire rings and areas designated for fires. There won't be any allowed fires outside of fire rings. Each campsite will also have lantern stations, a lantern pole, which helps to keep those lanterns away from the picnic tables and things like that. These are all just examples of safety measures that we're taking into account. Ms. Wertz already mentioned, but we do adhere to all of the requirements for the setbacks and the screening and bufferings. Those are convenient, that those are also goals of Newberry County, but those are also our goals to create a truly isolated camping experience. We don't want to have campers seeing other people's homes through the trees, so those buffers will help us. We might even be planting additional foliage to create even more of an isolation. As you can see on the GIS, the map, you can see that we have about a 2,000-foot long driveway, our entry that comes onto the campsite. And so because of that, you won't be able to see any building or RV or campsite or anything from Wheelan Road, and we like it that way. I think it'll be a nice entrance into the campground that will create a lot of privacy for both the campers and for the neighbors. I mentioned this earlier, but I forgot to mention just a little bit of detail. As far as those walking trails go, I really want to make sure to drive that home that we're really looking for a camping experience. We have 2.5 miles worth of walking trails planned, but they're along the border of the property, but there will be almost 4 miles of walking trails on the property in order to try to create an environment that will attract campers to us, not just campers that are traveling through. I want to make that part to be super clear about it being a family-oriented campground. We're not hosting festivals or parties here. My brothers and I, we together have like 15 kids, and so this is an effort to leave our jobs, our desk jobs, and move out to the campground and run a campground together and be operators. We're not hiring all that out. We're not real estate tycoons. We're not developers, but we believe we have the skills from our jobs and our current careers in order to help us make this into a success. Thank you.
Questions from Mr. Todd?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Coleman, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Titus, I think this is a wonderful idea and a great vision. I'm not a camper myself, but I could really see my grandson enjoying something like this. But one of the issues that was raised was in the event of a fire to the adjoining properties, what kind of insurance would be in place to take care of that? I think that was a concern from one of the letters.
Yes, ma'am.
It was?
It was, yes. So we are actually in the process of getting a soil classification made on the property. We have that scheduled pending this approval. And that's a soil classifier mapping out the property and telling us where would be the best locations for septic tanks and other utilities. I mentioned that we would have around 450 sites because we need to find out exactly where the best locations are those. And so we have an adaptable plan at this point, waiting to, as we work closely with DHEC to determine the right location for everything. Depending that result, if we end up with 415 sites or 460 or whatever the number is, we are getting insurance in place to help cover those numbers. We just basically don't have enough information yet at this point to set up the insurance, but it will be required as part of our financial situation in order to have the campground. So we will have to have insurance. As far as the insurance policies to cover the area, that's something we'll investigate. Honestly, we don't have a fire insurance policy in place yet. I know that state parks don't have that either, but I know that we can certainly investigate that if that's something that would be required.
Did
Okay,
that
that
answer
would
you?
be great.
Did that answer your
Thank you.
question? Okay.
Thank you.
And you brought up a good point, Ms. Coleman. I did forget to mention one of the other things that was listed in the letters that were read. It was specifically mentioned about trespassing, and again, we hope that as we market and target and advertise and try to get the right people at the campground, that we won't have people that are trespassing and walking through the campground. But if we need to do a property fence that borders the property, we're happy to do that. That's something that we certainly can work with Newberry County on to make sure that we have it in place if that's required.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay. Any more, Ms. Coleman?
No. Thank you, Mrs. Titus.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a
Yeah.
question. The two letters that you received, did either one of those, the Godfrey or the Riddles or Fulmer, did they list their tax map ID numbers?
I can give you Fulmer. Mr. Fulmer is 646-23.
How about the other one?
I don't see it.
Yes, I can give, the, Miss Riddle Godfrey is 647-8.
47-8.
Mr. Titus?
Yes,
did-
sir.
Did I hear you correctly that from Wheeling Road to your campground or camp facility is roughly 2,000 feet?
Yes, sir. It's not an easement, it's a legal property, but it's 66 feet wide and 2,000 feet long. It's 3 acres.
So when you ride down or ride by Wheeling Road, you're not gonna be able to see it then?
The only thing you would see is a small sign, a campground sign would be the
Right.
only evidence that there's anything there. Yes. And we like it that way. We're excited about that. Being able to have a well-landscaped, maintained road all the way down would really help to have people feel like they're leaving a neighborhood almost and heading into a campground.
I might have it in front of me without reading all of this. What is the buffer requirements on that?
100 feet? Well,
100 feet?
yes, but only on properties that border with residential homes, I believe. But the way we designed the campground just to accommodate is we put a 100-foot border.
All the way around?
Yeah, obviously, except for that 66 feet
Right.
wide property, of course.
Right, right. Any more questions from the,
It sounds like you're patterning this very much after a state park campground.
Yes,
With
sir.
all the facilities, the bathhouse, the general store, the fire rings, the rustic campsites, RV campsites.
Honestly, that's what I know. Our families are big campers. I have 6 kids myself, and my oldest is 10, my youngest is 2, so we can't go many places. They don't want us there. So we find ourselves camping a lot. And so we made a list of the things we liked that we saw on the campsites that we visited. And yes, we're trying to model it after a familiar camping experience for families.
You have a timetable?
Yeah, so we have construction set up for a 4 to 6 month construction. That's for both the horizontal, the earthwork, and the vertical buildings as well, inside that same time frame. And by the way, those are all with local contractors here in Newberry. Those are all, everybody we're working with so far, we're working very hard to make sure we keep the money here is the plan.
Any more questions from the panel? How many full-service, full hookup sites do you propose?
Well, so we're waiting on DHEC a little bit for that,
Yeah.
right, with the soil classification. At this point, we're targeting only 50 out of the 450. But it could be 15, it could be 60, we don't know for sure. But we've been planning for about 50. It really just depends on how the sites lay out. We could be less.
Any more questions, gentlemen?
I do. Exhibit, what I got here, F5, shows as you're coming in, they're like maybe some tent areas of some sort.
Oh, thank you very much.
And then exhibit F6 don't show nothing there as you come onto the property.
Oh, I see.
I was gonna ask that question there, why the,
So this was us just planning ahead, trying to prepare for if we find out that the campsites can't go anywhere because of the restrictions with DHEC. So if we needed a large leach field in order to do a community septic tank, we're just trying to prepare for an area that might work for that. And that's all it is almost like we are setting ourselves up for phases, but we're trying to do a one-time approval on everything.
think of that.
And if would you like further explanation of what all these shapes mean, or is this,
You had a drawing in there where the
I know, yeah.
RV sites.
Yes, sir,
and,
that's exactly right.
You might address the rest of us about it then, how it
Okay,
comes
so-
into play.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and please just remember, I've said it a few times, but I'll repeat it again, thank you so much. I'll repeat it again, just that we are very flexible, working closely with DHEC and that soil classification report that we'll get to determine exactly where the sites go. The ones that have sewer are the ones that will need to be moved based on the recommendations from DHEC. But what you're looking at here is essentially an area where you come in. Those circles that you see on there are large roundabouts. They're 150 feet wide. Those are areas that will be all grassed areas for kids to play in, and there'll be teepees and fun things that'll be inside of those areas. The dark lines that are red, that's the main road. The dotted ones are, and the main road is two-way. The dotted lines are one-way. And so the one-way traffic you can see goes in and through essentially a neighborhood of RV sites. The tent sites are a little bit more flexible, and those are going to be scattered around in between RV sites. Those are designated on this map as the plus signs. Each plus sign represents 4 tent sites. And again, we'll have some true primitive tent sites and some that have power. None of the tent sites will have water or sewer, of course. It's very small, I know, but you'll see there's a couple areas where it says bathhouse/laundry, pavilions, and so some of those buildings are scattered about as well, so that no camper has to walk too far to brush their teeth if they don't have the means at their specific site. We have to cross a creek. You see that creek right there with the bridge over the creek. We've already submitted applications with the Army Corps of Engineers to get approval to put a large culvert in there, and they've had that about a month now, so we're waiting to hear back on that, hopefully soon. And then there's in the small corner, you'll see a shop and a residence, a house there, and that's just something we're planning to make sure we have somebody there all times for safety.
Thank you there.
That answer you?
Tyson. Did I answer some questions? He answered a couple of questions I was gonna ask him. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions?
Well, I'd like to know, like, what size camper are you anticipating? I mean, some people travel in
Yeah.
20-foot, some,
So we have it designated with some premium sites. The premium sites will be full hookup, and those will be 75 feet deep. And
Okay.
so, which is larger than we need. 50 feet would be considered large for the industry. So we do have some premium sites to try to attract people that, we want to make sure everyone can come if they're able. The rest of the sites will be, total depth would be 50 feet. I believe I have those sketches here. Not that I'm asking you to look at them or anything, but the depth is 50 feet on a typical RV site with a second pad next to it. Should the camper, if it's a fifth wheel or something, they could park a 25-foot or 50-foot, wouldn't have a 50-foot fifth wheel. But you could have a 35-foot one and then park next to it if they wanted to do it that way.
okay. Thank you.
So this is proposed to be a nice destination
Yes.
campground as opposed to a transient campground.
That's a really great way to say it. That's exactly what we're targeting.
Yeah, we've been down the transient road before.
Yeah, and I've visited some of the campgrounds in Newberry County, and the last one down the road on River Road.
River Road.
Yeah, I don't want to speak negatively or anything, but that's certainly not what we're trying to do. That is a different direction entirely.
That was one of the transient campgrounds that we
Yeah.
dealt
Yes.
with years ago.
Yeah, I went down there, we met some people there and chatted with them, people that have been living there for 8 months, chatted with them about their experience and stuff, and it seems like a nice, safe place, but we're not looking for people to come and live there. We want people to come and vacation with us, and so that's why we'll be packing this campground with camping experiences to try to make it, like you said, a destination.
Any more questions from Mr. Titus from the board? Thank you, Mr. Titus.
Thank you.
Anyone here to speak against this proposal? Stand up, approach the,
My name's Cliff Fulmer, or Charles Clifford Fulmer is what I go by, okay? I live in that community, it's Wheeling Road. Don't know how many people's been down there. It's been more agriculture down that way. You see more farming down that way, and you see more forestry down that way. That's the way we live. The community really does, we don't want change, okay? But we know it's inevitable, okay? The agriculture, again, the rural, character of our community, but we understand that change is coming. I'm here to present some communities' concerns that rezoning of this camp and RV site needs to be addressed. First of all, have any of y'all ever been down that road? Have you ever seen a fire hydrant down that road? No. There is a hookup at the bridge. They pump out of the water when the water is not low. Presently, it's about 6 foot deep there now. If it gets any lower, they're not going to pump from there. The location that this place is going on the peninsula, I can remember back playing with Nelson Riddle. We'd walk out there, you could walk out halfway, and you'd be waist deep. Right now, you may see 2 foot up there. That's it. Don't know where you plan on getting a fire hydrant from. There is none. Fire protection is our #1 concern there because of the houses, because of the forestry that's around there. That needs to be addressed. We need some type of protection there. Then here you go talking about water. Well, if there ain't no fire hydrant down there, there is no city water. There is no city sewer. I did overhear him say something about putting septic tanks in. Well, as you've seen or heard, there was supposed to be something to cross a creek there. You let that get into that creek, and it goes down to Lake Murray, then you got the Dominion to deal with. Something needs to be addressed to this. And then there's other services, trash pickup. Where's that coming from? Will there be buffer zones? I heard the 100-foot buffer zone. What does it look like? What did it pertain to? How much assurance is the person that adjacent to that property are they going to get? That they're going to be okay if there is a fire? Are they going to take care of this? Then you got traffic problems already on that road. I mean, I drive a tractor. I go across the road, have to gather corn and stuff out of the gardens. Have to cut wood. A couple weeks ago, I was on that road, and right by my house is a double yellow, you can't pass. You're not supposed to. I made the signal. I've got lights on mine. I've got mirrors on mine. I made a signal to turn in my driveway. The person failed to even stop, wanted to go around me. If I wouldn't have seen him in the mirror, we both would have been hurt. I got some concerns here. We got bigger RVs that's going to be coming down this road, not alone them 200 houses to 400 houses that were just built on Plantation, or going to be built on Plantation Point, that's going to be traveling that road to get out to 26. Yes, there's one that goes down to Drew Island toward Chapin. We know how Chapin looks, okay? And in the mornings and in the afternoons, people are going to start using Macedonia Church Road to Wheeling, coming into Little Mountain, and there's some people here that are concerned about the traffic already in Little Mountain. Well, it's about to get worse. So yes, I do have some concerns here. The community has some concerns, and they need to be addressed by DHEC, also the agencies that are offered in Newberry County, and also Dominion. And I think the rezoning board needs to look at these before they address of saying, yes, let's do this. I think this should not go through. I really don't. I'm sorry to say that, but from what I've seen and the way I live down that road, it's content right now. I would like to keep it content, just as it is, because it's getting ready to get out of hand. Thank y'all.
Any questions for Mr. Fuller? Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak against this proposal? I can't see nothing but your hand. Stand up. Okay, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Carla Derrick. I'm a resident of Newberry County since 2017 and moved from the crowded Chapin area. My kids graduated from Chapin High School. I have 2 adult children, they're twins, and both are looking to move to Newberry County. I happen to be the old white house in front of the campground.
Is that the Epping house?
It's the old Epting house,
Yeah.
yes, sir. I bought that property in Newberry County out of auction on a cold February morning sitting on top of the courthouse, and have saved and saved and saved to put money into that house to restore the home. To hear that you're putting or going to allow a commercial property to come to my backyard. I want you to think about if someone told you they're going to put a campground with 400 campsites in your backyard. I can't get out of my driveway now in the mornings. I leave very early. I hit the school traffic going to and from work. Obviously, I work at a local hospital, and I go to and from work. I come at all hours of the morning and all hours of the night if I'm on call. And getting in and out of in the neighborhood itself, I'm not related to all the people that are here, but they've welcomed me into their community. My last name is Derrick. I'm an old Lexington County resident. So From my opinion, I am not real happy when we talk about the trespassing. I believe I have you guys on my cameras. I believe I have you on my back porch. Did you come and knock on my back porch? I didn't. Oh, okay. Well, it's just like your twin. I actually had Lee Foster out there the night. I live there by myself. I do have a boyfriend and I have 2 kids, but again, I have grown children. I have Lee Foster come by the house not too long ago because, again, someone was knocking on my back door. So we talk about adding another 450 people that are coming and going and coming and going to our community, and it's a little small community, that little place on Wheeling Road. When we talk about the traffic getting in and out, there's a new subdivisions going down Hollins Creek. All of that traffic is hitting Wheeling Road to get to 26. All of the traffic that's going out towards the lake and the Prosperity area. I have several friends that work with me in the hospital, and they say, I come by your house every morning and every afternoon because they're trying to get to 26 to go to work. School bus. I sat behind a school bus a week ago Tuesday, and I waited for 16 cars that were behind that school bus to get to Little Mountain. I'm assuming elementary. It looked like little kids on the school bus, and I counted 16 cars behind the school bus. That's what the traffic looks like on just a random day that I just thought, and here we're going to have 50-foot campers coming in and behind, trying to get in and behind a school bus. The infrastructure for a 2-lane road is not built to have a commercial property right there in the middle of it. You want to go down towards Crane Landing, where I understand there's another proposed subdivision down there, maybe that's the proper place for a campground. I'm a huge camper. I have a 35-foot RV. I'm not opposed to camping. It's just we're in a residential neighborhood where I should have my children, where I should be able to sit in my front porch and see my neighbors, not see camper after camper and traffic after traffic go by. I won't be able to get in and out of my driveway. My driveway is very adjacent to the driveway, and there's another driveway between the proposed area of the campground and my driveway, for which has not been developed. I wrote your name down, Mr. Titus, if I'm saying it correctly. You mentioned that property back there has been on the market. That property back there has been on the market since I've moved to Newberry. My understanding from the multiple people that have come by in regards to looking for that property.
Well, hey, how you doing? Great.
Looking at that property back there is because it's been advertised as lake property. And people come back to me and go, do you own that property? No, I don't own that property. I don't know the people that own that property. I don't know anything about that property except for you have the same concerns that everybody else has. It's not lake property.
And
Mr. Fulmer mentioned fire service in the area. I agree. There is no paid fire service in Little Mountain or Fairview area. Do we have a great volunteer fire department? Yes, we do, and my son happens to be one of those volunteer firefighters for Newberry County. However, when you're talking about 450 campfires in one night, you're talking about dryer fires when you talk about, again, I'm a huge camper. I camp all the time. I go to multiple campsites, never in a residential neighborhood, but they have campfires all the time. People go to sleep, they get intoxicated, they forget that they've got a fire going, they go to sleep, and they left, and the fire gets out of control. And this area is surrounded by timber and people who pay for timber in this area. Again, I've never met the man except for once who lives behind me, and I understand he's related to these guys. But but it's my house. I live there. So if this fire gets to my home, Newberry County can't protect it, then what? Dryer fires, when you're talking about adding wash machines and dryers. Chapin just had a dryer fire 3 weeks ago. If you have a laundry service at a campground, just like you have a commercial laundry service, they just had a fire there not too long ago. I think it was approximately 3 weeks ago, because someone put something in the dryer that didn't need to go in the dryer, or we don't clean lint out. Again, what happens to that fire? That's my house we're talking about. We've talked about the development in the area. Again, we've just approved, I'm assuming you guys just approved, or whomever approved, to build all those houses on Hollings Landing. All of those people are going to be using Wheeling Road to come down that way.
Mrs. Derrick, I'm gonna have to call time on you. You're repeating what Mr. Fulmer already stated, so let's try not to be redundant to speed up the meeting.
Okay?
Any questions for Ms. Derrick?
I would like to pose one question. When we're saying that this family is planning on doing this campground, if this campground that this family is proposing, if it goes south, typically that's what happened at Buffalo Creek. I understand that when Buffalo Creek's campground was first built, it was built for a weekender to use Lake Murray. When it went south, now it has people who live there nonstop, 24/7 in trailer park. Just as you were mentioning on the other road, again, is this a neighborhood environment? Thank you.
I can answer that. If the Tituses get approval, they get in there a year later and things aren't working out, if a new buyer was to buy into it, they would have to come through this same process and get approval.
Right.
It couldn't, just because it's approved, if this one gets approved, it won't be for the longevity of that property. It will be if a new owner was to come in, they would have to come back to the board with their plans.
So another proposed campground in
If-
my backyard.
Well, I'm saying if they sell and another developer for a campground would like to go back there, then they would have to get approval. It can't just change hands without coming back to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Derrick. You still with us, Ms. Coleman?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I had to leave momentarily, but I'm here.
okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak against this proposal?
Good evening. My name's David Coon. I live on the corner of Loop and Wheeling Road, less than a mile away from this property. I'm the fourth generation that lives on family land. Try not to repeat, but just briefly touching on some things that my neighbor said. Traffic concerns me. I'm the guy that calls DOT once a month to ask them if they'll please come out and fix the potholes on Wheeling Road. They just did that last week. I was thankful, so.
Thank you.
No problem. Second, as a retired firefighter and fire marshal for the city of Columbia, and still a fire inspector for a private company, I can tell you that you can't control fire. We are very fortunate. I was sad to hear that Crystal had 60 acres burn up, but we are very fortunate because in my career, which I started back in 1991 with the volunteer fire department at Little Mountain, and then went on to Columbia and being professional and so forth. All the training I've had dealing with wildland firefighters, we are very fortunate that we have not had the magnitude of fires like they did down near Myrtle Beach several years ago, if y'all remember that one. It could happen here, but we are very fortunate because it is a lot of timber there. I'd also just like to point out that just a few miles down the road, we do have Jerry Island. So we do already have an established state-supported campground in this area. So we're fortunate to have that. One of the other things that concerns me, and just touching back on the fire issue, Cliff mentioned earlier about the dry hydrant and the possibility of it not being watered there. Well, Lake Murray is lowered during the winter. They do that so, one, it's convenience, you can fix your dock and so forth. But, so Cliff's correct. If there's a situation they need to shuttle water, it's not coming from Crane's Landing close by. They're gonna have to go further out to get water to bring it in, more so delaying. So that's an issue there. one thing that the potential buyer, developer mentioned about is targeting families, but I would assume they're not going to discriminate against anyone who wants to lease a spot. So that would be my concern in addressing the targeting families in the business plan as opposed to the development and the reality of leasing those spots. Because I assume there's not going to be any discriminatory actions there on individuals that want to stay or rent a spot at this campground. The last issue I'd like to bring up is the posting of that property for this meeting. Just a few days after that zoning sign was posted, a storm came through and blew it down. So the sign was not there during the amount of time that it should have been to notify the neighborhood, the community, that this was coming up at this meeting.
Okay, I need to respond to that, Mr. Coon.
Okay.
This was posted in the paper weeks ago. Also, the contiguous property owners were notified in writing by means of a letter.
Okay, well, that's, okay. Thankfully, in talking with Cliff last week, he told me, hey, did you see the sign? No, I didn't see a sign out there. Well, it blew down, but there's a sign out there. This is what it pertains to. They're going to have a meeting. Come on out. So I just wanted to bring that last thing up. There's still a stake there, but there's no sign. We did have a storm come through shortly after it was posted. So, but I am in opposition. Thank you for allowing me to speak and hearing my concerns.
Any questions from Mr. Coon?
I just want to say to Mr. Coon, this is Kay Coleman. and
Yes,
I do
ma'am, Ms. Coleman,
understand
how
your
are you?
concerns. Oh, well, thank you. And you know, I am familiar with Wheeling Road area. So I do understand your concerns. The one point that you did bring up, and I thought was a very valid one, and that is discriminatory as far as actually who would be allowed to attend this particular site. So, and I'm sure all that's going to be taken in consideration.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
Any more questions from Mr. Coon? Thank you, Ms. Coleman.
Pleasure.
Anyone else here to speak against this proposal?
How are y'all?
All right, how about you?
Fine, thank you. Carol Frick, address is 2856 Wheeling Road. Family's been in the area since 1754 right there. So we have a long history there. Me and my father, we operate a little small farm there. And just to reiterate, we do have a lot of problems with traffic there. We have, we're the main fare through for going to Drew Island there. All the traffic comes off the interstate and goes right down through there. So we already have a lot of campers going through there. Almost every year we have, right there in front of our property, several accidents, people running through our fields, destroying property, just with traffic. So that's just to reiterate that point. My other concerns would be water and sewer on this property. And like I said, I don't know how they plan on doing that. There's no public water there, and my understanding is the property wouldn't perk before, so I don't know how they're gonna get septic tanks in there. So I don't know. These are my concerns about the property, and I'm not a fan of all the traffic, and the noise pollution is gonna be involved with that many people across the road from my house. I can already hear jet skis and motorboats running up the lake as it is, and I'm probably 1.5 miles from the lake. So a campground across the road is gonna cause quite a bit of noise pollution, I would think, as well. So anyway, I don't want to reiterate what the concerns my neighbors have brought out, but those are just a few things I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Frick? Thank you, Mr. Frick. Anyone else to speak?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Mr. Titus a question?
Sure.
You say this is going to be a family park. Is it going to have open container alcohol? I mean, can people drink openly on the park outside of their campers?
We would not restrict people. We would not restrict campers from bringing alcohol onto the ground, but we wouldn't sell it or promote it in any way. We are truly going for a quiet, sleepy campground. So no, there's nothing worse than camping while people are partying and stuff. I think somebody else mentioned partying, but that would not be something that we would want on the park. We would have noise curfews to try to keep any chatting down and stuff. But when we're talking about noise on the campground, we're talking about like kids laughing and like dogs barking. There's not like a shooting range. There's not like equipment out there to make a lot of noise. There's not, we don't have a dock access because of the fringe property owned by Dominion. This is meant to be a relaxing type location. So I don't think noise is going to be a concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Titus, while you're here,
Yes, sir.
I have a question. The concern was brought up regarding water and sewage. So your plans are contingent on DHEC
Yeah.
approving, so what are your contingency plans?
Yeah, so I'll be very open about this. We simply are at a crossroads where it's going to cost us between $15,000 and $20,000 to confirm that we can even put all of the sites where we want them, and we're not we're not millionaires. This is coming out of our savings to pay for this, and so we're here seeking approval so we can know to move forward to the next step to find out those answers. So we're intending to do large wells with collection tanks. Those wells can be used for putting out fires if there's any kind of concern with fire. But again, that's a good example of another feature that a typical campground doesn't have. That's something that a normal campground doesn't have, a fire prevention system in place. But we could use that. We would have a system in place that we could draw on for that need. But the answer to your question is until we get the soil classification and the engineering done by DHEC, we won't know exactly what configuration, what amount, and where everything is going. There is a chance that we will not be able to do any septic tanks except for a dump station, and we could do 3 dump stations and still pass code. They can be different places or in one place on the park, which actually ties really heavily into the issue that Ms. Coleman brought up, which was how do we pursue, and Mr. Kuhn brought up the same thing, how do we target families? And the answer is by not offering a long-term lease option for the campgrounds, and by also not having as many full hookups. By not having full hookups, people won't stay for months at a time. If we're not able to do septic tanks and we do have to do a dump station, those are typically 3 to 4 night stayers. That would be typical for the national average for our region. So that's how we would be targeting those families without discriminating anybody by just simply not offering. It's like going to a hotel. They could pay the nightly rate for a long term if they want to, but that would be a completely different market than River Oak Campground that would pay, they're getting paid $500 a month for a long-term stayer. At our campground for the same period would be $1,800. So people wouldn't do that. Reasonable people wouldn't do that.
Thank you, Mr. Titus.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'll
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
Tyson about, I know the Corps engineer and stuff about a bridge. If, I notice it's 2 different piece of parcels. If your bridge can't get there, how you plan on developing it then?
So
If they don't pass it?
yeah, so there's the 2 options for crossing the creek. And by the way, those are 2 separate pieces of property. After the soil test, when we do a survey, we have to pay for a survey anyways. We'll be combining those properties, so we won't need a 100-foot setback between them. But the crossing the creek, the Army Corps engineer will approve us, that they usually do, but if they don't, then we can always still cross that space with a bridge. And if we have to do that, we would simply move it farther down where the creek is not as deep, and crossing the bridge will be a little bit less expensive. Again, flexibility on the design in order to make that work. So we're waiting to hear back on the Army Corps engineers whether or not we can do culvert, or if we have to cross the bridge without disturbing the water base.
Answer your question, Mr. Metz?
Yes.
Okay, any more questions from Mr.
I've got a general question. I don't know who to address it to. With the development that's going on out in that area, does anybody know if the County Water and Sewer Authority has any plans in the future to bring water and sewer into that area?
I haven't heard of any, I don't know.
I can tell you that I asked in 2017 and was told that there was no plans for water, sewer, or natural gas. As when I went to buy.
I'm sorry, I can't,
Sorry. But that's what I was told in
That was in 2017.
That was in 2017, 2018, when I purchased the property, because I was, again, the older home that I live in is built in the 1700s. It doesn't have, central heating and air. So, I was asking about natural gas options, and I was told there was no plans for water, sewer, or natural gas in the area.
Okay,
Thank you.
Not to say that couldn't change, but that's what I was told.
any more questions?
Can I just speak to just two of the concerns that were mentioned? If I could, just the two concerns would be, Ms. Derrick mentioned that she would be concerned with 450 people at the property behind her. I just want to make sure that that would be amazing, but that would not be very typical for campgrounds. So a typical occupancy for campgrounds is going to hover around 40%. So it would be very rare, maybe on holiday weekends, to get up anywhere near that number, but we don't expect. We're not anticipating that type of occupancy. That would be far above any kind of typical campground. And then I just also want to just point out that we're excited about being near Drury Island. I think we offer different things, and we hope to try to convert people that are coming to visit Newberry from just visiting Drury Island to also visiting us, kind of hoping to kind of do what we can to build up that economy for the whole camping experience for all of Newberry County.
Ms. Dirk, does your property border this property?
Yeah, it does not border it. It's directly behind me. There's 30 planted pine acres owned by relatives that aren't related to me, that is directly behind me, and then this property is adjacent. So again, the access road proposed is directly attached to his access road to go, again, that is actually attached by a small piece of property to my driveway. So it's my driveway, their access road to the 30 acres, and then their access road are directly attached to each other. So again, 400, even if it's 200 people, that's 200 people in and 200 people out. Can you imagine a Friday through a Sunday? So I have no words to say the traffic that would be in front of my house all day long. People coming in on Friday, people leaving on Sunday, and then the people that are staying there on vacations during the summer. We talked about dogs and children. This is my home. This is my backyard.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions? Anyone else like to speak? For or against?
My name is Bobby Bannister. I live in the Wheeling community. How many acres would they be establishing the campground on?
130.
Okay. 130 acres with 450 campsites. Drury Island is 350 acres with probably less than 150 campsites. So that puts into perspective the difference in the size of the campground and the quantity of people. How many people are in your family, you said?
6 kids.
6 times 450. I don't think that there's infrastructure that will handle it, or I don't think enough research has been done by DOT to establish the traffic flow in our area to approve this project at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Bannister? Thank you, Mr. Bannister. Anyone else like to speak?
Excuse me, is
Yeah.
it possible I could clarify the comment because okay. Thank you. When I address the issue of targeting families, I'm not alluding to the individuals that want to come and live there. The, individuals working at the nuclear plant that are living it. I'm not addressing those or Buffalo Creek. I'm addressing me and Bobby decides to get married, so we're going to invite a bunch of people over and we're going to have a bachelor party during our camping trip, and we're not family. So that's the position I was addressing, not the issue of transient in nature, because all of these people are transient in nature. I mean, same as a hotel or a motel. It's R1, transient in nature. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Speak now. Just because myself or this board might think a proposal is a good idea, a bad idea, whether we like it or don't like it, we're bound by the law with some leeway. And I'm going to read you how the law applies to this particular proposal. The board is required to consider the following factors per section 153.053 of the zoning ordinance. And this is a little different than what I read before. No special exception permit shall be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals unless the following general findings of fact are made concerning the proposed special exception. The use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located, designed, and proposed to be operated according to the information submitted. The use complies with all regulations and standards of this ordinance. The use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining properties, or the use is a public necessity. The location and character of the use, if developed according to the information that's submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located. The use will not create traffic impacts that will endanger public safety or create or contribute to congestion. The use will not create noise, light, glare, odor, or obstruction of airflow on adjoining properties. That the proposed use will not be in conflict with, but will further the objectives of the Newberry County Comprehensive Plan for the area in which it is located. In considering special exceptions, and that's what we're considering here, the board may prescribe appropriate requirements and additional conditions deemed necessary to remove danger to health and safety, relieve or reduce adverse impact of a special exception, and to protect adjacent properties and the character of the area. And conditions as written in section 153-141 and 153.089 of the Newberry County zoning ordinance. Judges, you've heard all the arguments for and against. What's your pleasure? You with us, Ms. Coleman?
She's speaking, but the mic must be off.
I read her lips.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, I am.
Okay. We don't need to leave it hanging. We need one way or the other.
Well, Mr. Chairman, as I understand, should we approve this, Mr. Titus's next step is to go to DHEC for approval.
Oh, yeah.
And if that falls through, or tonight, and it sounds to me like he's just an entrepreneur that wants a family-style campground, and with the understanding that if there is not approval by the Army Corps of Engineers or DHEC, then this nulls our decision tonight, but I move that we grant this special exception on those contingencies.
Motion's been made by Judge Hipp. Is there a second?
Mr. Chairman, I second that, deem that it would be necessary to remove the danger of health and safety. The appropriate agencies will do that and reduce any adverse impact of a special exception to protect the adjacent properties. The agencies would come in and do that. So with that in mind, I second the.
Second's been made by Ms. Coleman. Any more discussion? All in favor signify with the uplifted hand. All against signify with the uplifted hand. 4 in favor, 2 opposed, the motion carries. The proposal is approved. Thank you, everybody. Other business. You okay? No, don't leave yet. Thank you, Dave.
Yes, sir.
Any more business, Ms. Wertz? Bridget, anybody? Next, scheduled meeting, April the 5th. Do we have anything on the agenda? 2 already? No news on training?
Yes. So, we are going to try to get an in-house training.
Oh, yeah?
We're looking at getting a presenter. Hopefully we can get BZA in 1 meeting, but if we need to do it in 2, we can work around schedules. But we're thinking about starting about 4, run until 7. That'll get you your 3 hours for this year. One goal is to really work hard on getting our hours each year. So be on the lookout for information coming from staff about getting an in-house speaker to do us some training.
And we can still do online, correct?
Yes, online is available for anyone who wants to do it. If you get your 3 hours prior to the meeting that we're gonna hold here, by all means, feel free to do that, but if you wanna come join us still, but we just at least need to get 3 hours of CEUs each year.
Do you have a date for that?
Not yet, I'm working with the county administrator on that, so as soon as we can get some dates together, we'll get you some information out. Real quick, while I have everybody, the letter that you received about going, transitioning into email, getting your agendas. One point tonight was brought up, that's a great idea. If you want to bring your tablet, your laptop versus printing them, we will get you a Wi-Fi password for those devices. So if that was a concern of having to print these large packets that we're going to be emailing, that is going to be a solution that we can work with.
Okay, anything else? The chair will entertain a final motion.
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
I second that motion,
And I
Mr. Chairman.
second the motion.
You can third it.
Go in peace. We're adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you,
Good
Ms.
job,
Coleman.
Mr. Boland.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman.